welcome back to another fantastic episode of Adventures in DevOps. I'm one of your hosts, Nell Shamrell Harrington. I'm an engineer at Mozilla, and with me is my co-host, Tyler. Tyler, how's it going?
Hey, everybody. It's going good with me. Thanks for asking.
Great. Well, glad to have you here because we have got a large number of guests this time. We've got three individuals participating with us as well on the topic of chaos engineering. And I'd like to go ahead and Colton, why don't you introduce yourself first?
Hi, my name's Colton Andrus. I'm CEO and one of the founders of Gremlin. I grew up dealing with reliable systems at Amazon before joining Netflix. Saw a lot of good value there, was a big believer in it. And so I ended up founding Gremlin with Forney, as he's lovingly referred to, and Tammy, who joined us very early on.
Awesome. Well, Forney, let's go to you next.
All right. Well, my name is Matthew Fornacieri, but as Colton alluded to, I go by Forney. I actually got my start out of college at Amazon, working on, the availability team, keeping the Amazon retail website up and reliable. Shortly thereafter, got given a team where I had to write a weekly email to Jeff Bezos. So you learn to make things reliable pretty quickly. So that's my background.
Awesome. Tammy, how about you? Welcome.
Thanks so much. Great to be here. My name's Tammy, and I'm a principal site reliability engineer at Gremlin. And I've been on the Gremlin team for over 2 years now. Absolutely love it. I joined and I was one of the first 10 employees. And before that, I previously worked at Dropbox as a site reliability engineering manager for databases and also block storage. And a lot of what I've done when I've joined Gremlin has been trying to figure out how can I help other people do chaos engineering and do site reliability engineering work, because I got a lot of great results doing it myself, like a 10x reduction in incidents. That's me.
Today's podcast is sponsored by UpCloud. Is your website running slow? Supercharge your hosting performance by deploying on the world's fastest cloud infrastructure. UpCloud offers superior cloud servers and advanced scalability, instant backup snapshots, and easy-to-use control panel. Fully featured API and a ton of integration options and managing partners. Pricing starts at only $5 a month with enough performance options to host any website or app, all backed by 24/7 live in-house support. You can get started today with a free trial using promo code DevChatTV at upcloud.com/signup. They'll give you a $25 credit to get you going. Remember, upcloud.com/signup with promo code DevChatTV.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, let's, to get started, let's talk about what exactly is chaos engineering. I mean, I'm sure a lot of our listeners have heard of Chaos Monkey at Netflix, but chaos engineering, it seems to have evolved into this subfield of DevOps or subfield of engineering. Why don't you tell us, our panelists from Gremlin, how do you define chaos engineering?
Yeah, so the way I always describe it when I'm home for the holidays or I'm interacting with my family is to use a couple analogies. The analogy I like best is that of the vaccine, because it's a little counterintuitive up front. Hey, we're going to cause some harm, but ultimately by causing that harm, our bodies are able to learn and adapt and protect against that type of failure in the future. And so it's a little bit like the vaccine. The other analogy I like is that of the fire drill. There's a reason most of us grew up running fire drills, and that's because when something catastrophic or an emergency happens, we don't want everyone to run around with their hair on fire. We want people to react calmly and safely, not to make things worse, but to be able to make them better. And as a call leader and somebody that's spent a lot of time carrying a pager and dealing with those outage calls, it's nice to have that opportunity to practice. So those are both also influences about why I care deeply about this approach.
And one thing just to add to that, I think one of the common misconceptions about the term chaos engineering is that it's just random chaos. It's not actually it at all. It's, very controlled chaos. It much more closely resembles, the scientific method where you have something that you're trying to either prove or disprove, a hypothesis. And you do that by injecting failure to see, whether or not your system is actually resilient against these bad behaviors that crop up in the real world.
Tammy, could you give us a bit of an SRE perspective on this?
Yeah, to me, the reason why I really like chaos engineering is because it's been a great way for me to reduce incidents. And one of the ways that you can do that is you can actually look at previous incidents that have happened, and then you write up your postmortem. You then do your fixes, so you make sure the action items are done. But then what happens next, right? What do we do after we've written the postmortem and we check the action items off? We just sort of, hope. And we all know in the SRE world that hope is not a strategy. So what we say with chaos engineering is you can actually reproduce that incident, and you can make sure that you wouldn't be affected by it if it was to happen again. So that's like a really cool way to inject failure to prove that all of your work that you've done after the postmortem process is actually like awesome.
Fantastic. Now, let's say someone's hearing about this, says, I want to bring chaos engineering to my org. You all three of you alluded to this. That doesn't mean you're going to have one of your employees go into your data center and necessarily start yanking Ethernet cords. If someone wants to get started with chaos engineering, wants that resilience, where would they start?
So I think it's an interesting question because there's a lot of different problems that you can solve with chaos engineering. We spoke about the fire drill analogy, and that's really about how do you train teams? How do you prepare them to be on call to build that muscle memory? How do you ensure that your alerts and your monitoring software is working correctly? And how do you cut down on the noise? How do you filter out the cruft and ensure it's only engaging you at the right times? Those are both more process-oriented approaches where I've seen chaos engineering give a lot of insight and teach people where they can improve. And then it's interesting because if you're a larger company, maybe one of the things you care about is whether your database can be restored or failed over correctly. Perhaps you're running in multiple cloud regions or in multiple cloud providers. And you need to ensure that you can fail over gracefully between those, or you can run an active, passive scenario. And so those are kind of broader, more in my opinion, in the disaster recovery testing world use cases. But if there's one use case people walk away with that I think is the most valuable, it's that we've all built distributed systems that rely on someone else's system. And what happens when that other system slows down or breaks or fails? And there's been a few, really public examples. One I usually refer to as the S3 outage from a couple of years back. We all hope that, S3 is a non-critical dependency, but a lot of people learned that day, we depend upon that for deploying. We depend upon that for caching. We depend upon that to serve our website. And so something that may not have been on the forefront of our minds when building was, what happens if this dependency fails? And so that's the one to me that is every team should, map out what their dependencies are and go test what happens if they fail. That will get you so much mileage.
Yeah, I've told the story on the podcast before, but a few years ago, I was working on a major election campaign. And on election day, one of our cloud services appeared to go down. It turned out it wasn't necessarily down all the way, it was severely degraded, but we were just, panicking because there was absolutely nothing we could do about it. And elections that usually you don't have a chance to redo them. So I thought, anytime I'm working on something that critical, I've got to have some other service that I can fail over to and know that I can fail over to it.
And the fact that what you just said really resonates, I think, it's knowing that you can fail over to it. And it kind of, it alludes back to what Tammy said as well. You can't just hope that it's going to happen. And the only way you can really do this is by, practicing in the real world. One thing I wanted to say, I thought it was kind of funny, Nell. You said, you don't just run through a data center and pull Ethernet cords out of the wall. That's kind of how this whole practice started back at Amazon with Jesse Robbins, the master of disaster, just running through yanking cords out of the wall. So, we've abstracted that up and we do it in a little bit more of a graceful way these days with software, but that is sort of where it all kind of came from. And it kind of reminds me of engineering practices where, you go hand simulate things first and then you figure out what works, what doesn't, and then you go build out more advanced solutions, right?
Awesome.
Yeah, I had a question that came to mind as you guys have been discussing it so far, because as you mentioned, Tammy, you're taking more of the reliability aspect. And I'm thinking, okay, so where does the line for chaos engineering go and reliability engineering? How much of the Venn diagram do they overlap? Is it pretty much two circles are one, or is there some space there?
So yeah, the main way that I always think about it, when I'm working on, working on complex systems, distributed systems, very critical systems, is I'm always focused on results. Like, what can I do that's going to get me very impactful, positive results for customers? And to me, like, the main thing that I want to do is one, reduce incidents. The best way that I found to do that is by injecting failure using chaos engineering. So that's part of what you need to do it as an SRE, right? Like, you're often helping everybody actually learn how to better manage incidents, how to react to incidents, how to be calm. The other thing that I actually created that no one else in the industry was talking about was the idea of on-call training using chaos engineering. So that's something that I pioneered at Dropbox. And yeah, everyone internally was like, wow, how come we've never been trained to do on-call before? That is really weird. It's a strange thing. Like, why does that not happen? Usually you just get thrown a pager and they say good luck, and then you have to just do it. So I think, these days, that's really not an effective way to train people, and we can do a lot better. And a really good way is to, look through past incidents, or, when you've got someone new joining, say it's a new grad, someone who's just graduated from university and they're going to be on call for critical systems. That's happening a lot more these days. Like, they want to be trained up. They want you to be able to help them and guide them. So yeah, I'm seeing lots and lots of people doing SRE work these days, and that's really exciting to see the field growing. We also run a yearly conference called ChaosConf, and we actually had Dave Renson, who runs Google's CRE program, that's customer reliability engineering. He spoke at ChaosConf, and yeah, that was really great too. So it's definitely an interesting area where, all the SREs are really that are making use of chaos engineering. They're getting great results across a number of different areas. One of my other favorite areas is, in terms of looking after databases, I was running, 10,000 database machines. That's a lot of machines with 4 engineers. So obviously it's heavily automated, but you need to make sure that restores work, that clones work, that promotions work. Everything has to work all the time. So the best way to make sure that it does is by injecting failure. And then I love metrics, so I'll measure everything. How long does it take for a restore to happen? How long does it take for a clone to happen? How long does it take for a backup to happen? And sometimes you'll notice issues when you actually stop a restore midway or stop a clone midway. So that's just a way to really dive into the details and get some big wins. And yeah, I never had a Sev-Zero incident after I started working at Dropbox, and there were a few before I joined. So, it's my big secret to success, actually.
The secret to success is chaos, it sounds like.
Yeah, I like the tagline for the company of the failure as a service, that you provide the failure as a service.
Yes.
And the service that it provides is the education. And so, yeah, I really dig that. I worked on a client recently where we were doing it from the software side of things. And when I say software side, I mean developing applications. So you have an application and you need to do quality assurance on a QA. And so, this now in today's world, we have people writing and building the platforms and the operations side of things, engineering that has moved into that, DevOps engineering, reliability engineering, et cetera. And so, yes, of course, this is proactive QA. Do you guys do it more? Do you ever do it on a production system instead of a sandbox system, or where do you draw the line for that type of testing?
So obviously, I'll give you my take on that, but I think that the commentary on QA is actually quite interesting. QA has evolved in the last 10 and 15 years. When we're doing waterfall deployment and, a few deployments a year, we could invest heavily in ensuring that deployment was blessed before it made it out the door. In the world where we've decentralized our teams, and it's more the world of you build it, you own it, you operate it. And as a good engineer, you're expected to be doing some degree of test-driven development or testing in your pipeline. In a way, whose responsibility is the overall quality of this distributed system? And so to me, that's really the need that needs to be filled by chaos engineering. And so to your earlier question, reliability engineering, resilience engineering, chaos engineering, to me, I'm not caught up on the nomenclature. The intent is that our customers have a great experience, that our systems operate well, and that our engineers aren't woken up in the middle of the night, that they can sleep and come in and do their hard thought work, without being sleep deprived. And so that's really this trend I've been noticing, is that forcing function on the overall system. We may be doing this at the service level, the team level, to make sure we handle the failures of our dependencies, that our alerting and monitoring work well, that our team knows how to get engaged and handle an incident. And it's software and people and processes. It crosses all lines. You can't decouple them. They're one and the same in essence. There might be different approaches we take, but we have to view them all. We have to account for them all. And so this concept that we can go into our live systems, our production systems, and ultimately perform the last stage of quality assurance is kind of what's maybe a debatable statement, but it's the missing piece of DevOps as we're practicing it today. We do all this hard work to build, deploy, to get it ready. Often we're canarying it as we're deploying it into production, and then we push it out there and we hope. And it's, hey, my piece worked. Why didn't your piece work? And hey, we did all the right things or we didn't have enough time. But that's where, if there's a team or a group of of engineers with a vested interest go out and do that testing in production, they can verify that the core use cases and failovers work correctly.
So take me a bit through your products. I know you're chaos engineering as a service. Someone comes to your website. What are they looking for? What kind of experience are they having? What can they do with the Gremlin product?
Yeah, absolutely. So our product is host-based. So, there's an install step. And then once they've got the product installed on their host, whether it be, bare metal, a VM in a container or Kubernetes, they're able to get up and running right away. And so once they're installed, we actually have the ability to recommend to them particular scenarios that they can start with. I know you asked a little bit earlier about where you start, right? And so there is sort of a baseline that we can get people to, and we recommend to them, here are the base things that you should be running. We integrate, with all the cloud providers, so we can do that right out of the box. And yeah.
Yeah, and so to build on that, some of those scenarios are like what we've been discussing. We need to verify that we can handle region evacuation. We need to verify that we can handle a failed dependency. Maybe we need something simple to start with. Do our auto scaling rules kick in when we need them? And do the new hosts come and go fast enough that our customers aren't impacted? And so those scenarios are really us taking, what we've observed from our customer base and our experience in industry and trying to condense down the core set of things any team would get value from. The underlying pieces are the building blocks of failure that we can cause. And so that might be consuming resources. So let's take up a bunch of threads. Let's take up a bunch of CPU. Let's eat up a bunch of memory and simulate, a memory leak. Let's create some IO overhead. There's a set of things that are related to state management on the host. What happens if a process dies? Do we have that good cron babysitter? Does it kick in and bring it back fast enough? Are we rotating logs correctly? What happens if time changes? We're coming up on daylight savings again, and there's always an outage related to some tricky bit of, time logic is the worst. If you've written a lot of code, if you remember early versions of Joda time or the like, that there's all sorts of subtleties of what can go wrong. And then that last category is really things that go wrong at the network level. So I can't talk to a dependency, or I can, but it's slowed. And so maybe I'm introducing a second of latency or 100 milliseconds to help find that threshold, to find the elbow where things start to fail over. What happens if DNS fails or there's a lot of packet loss? And so we're really trying to give customers the building blocks to recreate any failure they might have experienced, the framework to build those scenarios and share them with their teams, and then helping them to run them and measure the outcome so that they know whether or not their systems are resilient to those types of failures.
Early in my career, I figured out which jobs were worth working at and which ones weren't, mostly by trial and error. I created a system that I used to find jobs and later contracts as a freelancer. If you're looking for a job or trying to figure out where you should go next, then check out my book, The Max Coder's Guide to Finding Your Dream Developer Job. The book walks you through figuring out what you want, vetting companies that meet your criteria, meeting that company's employees, and getting them to recommend you for a job. Don't settle for whoever has listed their job on the job board. Go out and proactively find the job you'll love. Buy the book at devchat.tv/jobbook. That's devchat.tv/jobbook.
Got it. So just digging in, just a hair deeper. So I know there's a host machine. Are there agents running on different machine or other machines that host machine talks to? How does it kind of work on a technical framework level?
Yeah, so the agent is either host level or it can be deployed as a container, or we actually have an application level approach if you're doing serverless or you want to get up into your UI code. And that gives people the building blocks. Typically, you're installing them on your application. The beauty and the detriment of the network is a network failure. We don't have to go break S3 to see what happens if S3 goes down. We can just drop all our traffic to S3 for a period of time. And that kind of dovetails. There was an element of this earlier, but to go to production, to do this testing, we're doing it to prevent outages. And so we never want to go do it in a haphazard way that introduces more risk. And so one of the core concepts is that of the blast radius. We always want to run the smallest experiment that will teach us something. And if we can break a single host and find a major production outage bug in staging, great. It's efficient engineering. And so what the pattern we've seen be successful is, I'll start with a single host. If that works, if it works as expected, then I'll go to 3 or 5 or 10 hosts. I'll grow it up until I'm running in the entirety of that environment. And then if I'm ready to go to production, I'll reset that blast radius back down. Can I test on a single device, a single user, a single host? And if that works, then I have the trust and confidence to grow that blast radius up to be full scale. And that's important because you learn different things at different scales. Like at the small scale, it's did I handle my null pointer exception well? Or, do I have a good fallback that gracefully degrades if this service is down? Or can I show some cache data? But at the large scale, you're testing, do I back off of a downstream dependency if they start to go underwater? Do I shed load if I start to go underwater? These timeouts and these thread pools and all the configuration, that's a super important but understated part of our production systems is all the configuration that is tuned and make sure it runs well. And if we've never seen the system under duress, we're tuning for the wrong thing. If we tune for the happy case, we're going to be disappointed because it needs to protect us when things go wrong.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned happy case. It harkens back to the QA models and like this is the happy path. And what we expect is we've already tested those. And I think what you're saying with chaos engineering is really thinking creatively to break it in new ways. To follow up on what Nell's question was just about, it's like, what of the Gremlin platform or framework allows you to do some of the things you just mentioned, like being able to do it just containing the blast radius and configure that? Is that something you configure, in the golden language of YAML? This is how we configure everything in DevOps, right? How do you configure that? How do you set the blast radius? What are the knobs and
the golden language of YAML? I'm respectfully, and this you'll see in my answer in just a moment. I don't think XML and YAML are the answer.
I've not heard that before. No.
So one of the things we learned building this at Amazon, me and Matt together, and then we had the opportunity to revise some of the tooling at Netflix and build the next generation, is if you want people to do the right thing, you need to make it easy. And so how does our product guide in that? We have a nice visualization that shows you the percentage of your environment that you're targeting when you're executing these attacks or these experiments. And so that allows us to guide people. Hey, this is your first experiment. Maybe you shouldn't run it at 100% of production. Maybe you should start at 1% of staging. And then, as you add in more and more, and of course, there's tags and ways to describe our environment. So I might go from a host to a zone to a region. I might do it by service, but helping engineers to understand before they click go what the potential side effects might be is just helping them with that mental model.
Yeah, and that's built right into the product. The scenarios I alluded to earlier have different steps. And so like Colton mentioned, you start with the smallest step. So maybe one host out of this particular service. And then I think, Tyler, you asked about what knobs do you turn? Well, we support basically saying, cool, now attack 25% of it, now 50, now 75, and slowly growing that up so that you can see that, you can see the impact as it grows and as you expand the blast radius.
Does it help to dovetail into what Tammy was saying before? Do you have a way to then take that data and put it into a metric to start to do the math.
Or is there a report that's generated, or?
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah, so today, there's a lot of moving pieces we need to validate in the process. And so it might be, is my run book up to date? Did someone get engaged correctly? Was the dashboard measuring the right thing? And so there's some of those, what I would call side effects. Really, I feel chaos engineering is the capstone that helps us to actually tune and validate that those process pieces work correctly. And then once we're done running the experiment, what is a successful chaos experiment? It's a bit of a fun question, because if things break, well, that's kind of the point. You want to find the things that break. You're making progress. But it's also nice if you run an experiment and everything behaves the way you expect. And so what we ended with were kind of 3 criteria to help grade an experiment. Was it detected? So did our monitoring catch it? And were we alerted and engaged correctly? Was it expected? Did the system fail in the way that we thought it would? Again, a lot of what happens with chaos engineering is uncovering unknown unknowns and unknown side effects. And so it's okay if it wasn't expected, but the number of times I've heard, a customer or a team say, we're going to run this, we're going to fail this over, nothing's going to happen. And, 2 minutes into the experiment, we're hitting the halt button because something else happened. And we're like, whoa, hold on. That's not what we expected to happen. Why did that happen? And that lets us dig in. And then the last one is, can we mitigate the outcome? Where possible, we want to gracefully degrade and turn, a SEV 1 into a SEV 2, or turn a critical failure into a non-critical failure. So that's our best guess, but, love to hear your thoughts. If you've got recommendations, there's still a lot to learn in this space.
Yep, I'm thinking, harkening back to what you were talking about, Tammy, earlier about setting up on-call training. I can't think of a better, resource to find what people need to be trained on, or what the organization needs to prioritize in terms of training, other than making things go wrong and seeing what happens.
Exactly. I think the best way to learn is by doing. And we've heard a lot from the community that, for example, maybe they'll say, my aspiration is that I'd like to use Gremlin to be able to improve MTTD, mean time to detection. So maybe it's just taking them a really long time to even detect incidents. Maybe they're not sure if their monitoring is even picking up that incidents are occurring, the right person's not getting paged, all of these types of things. So what we can do is we have an amazing customer success team as well. And they work hand in hand with our customers. We have a lot of enterprise customers that have large scale systems, There's finance companies, people care about money. That's a big thing. I used to work at the National Australia Bank, and that's actually how I learned about chaos engineering in the first place. Back in 2013, we actually implemented Chaos Monkey on production because we moved to AWS. And Chaos Monkey, all that does is shut down servers, but it was a good way to practice. And the whole thing was because all the engineers were getting paged all the time. We weren't sure if we were able to pick up issues that were occurring, MTDD was very bad. The right people weren't getting routed for the different alerts that were firing. So yeah, we did that, and it was a nice first step. But yeah, lots of interesting things have happened in that space. And actually, NAB was the first finance company in the world to do chaos engineering. It's amazing. I moved to America after that, and I was talking to all these other big finance companies, and they're like, wow, that's cool that you did that there back in 2013. Totally makes sense. It's a good way to do it. And the other really interesting thing, I think, if you think about, on-call training and using chaos engineering to do that, using Gremlin to actually trigger issues, make sure that, you're detecting it fast and it's going to the right person, you're able to actually identify that there's an issue. I went a few weeks ago to a hackathon to actually be a mentor, and it was a really good learning experience for me because I hadn't been to one in years. I used to mentor at them 6 years ago, and it was awesome because we had a Gremlin table there, and all of the students totally 100% understood the need for chaos engineering because they were like, well, I'm building this software, of course I want it to be reliable. And then I was like, okay, what are you building? Okay, they say, I'm building an application that uses 3 different APIs. And then I'd say, all right, what do you think you might need to do to make it more reliable? They're like, well, if one of my APIs doesn't work, I need a backup. And I'm like, totally. They get it, and they have ownership for it, and they want to make sure that they're building the most reliable software possible, and they want to prove that it's reliable. So I am absolutely loving the next generation of engineers. Like, I can't wait for them to start work. It's going to be like 1 or 2 years and they'll all be coming into all these, giant companies all over the world. And, I think everyone's going to be really lucky to pick them up because they have a great mindset. Yeah.
Something I've occasionally wondered about, it's kind of the startup life. When you're bringing a newish kind of engineering or newly defined category of engineering, it's easy to bring it to smaller stage startups who are usually very nimble, very agile. But when you bring it to large financial institutions or large government institutions, it's a lot more challenging. So how has that been for you, bringing the concept of chaos engineering into these big bureaucratic institutions?
Well, the interesting thing for me, like from my experience, is that they 100% are on board because they just know how important it is. So, I always found that at the National Australia Bank, we were always trying to innovate. We were always trying to do great work. I got to work with so many amazing people that always just wanted to do better. So, yeah, there really wasn't much bureaucracy. It was more like, hey, like this is something that we saw Netflix doing in America. Maybe we should try it because it might actually enable us to provide a better customer experience. It's tough. If you've got Dropbox has 500 million users, you just know that you have so many users, you need to be able to service them and give them a good experience. When it's a bank, maybe you have a few million users. So not as many, but they care a lot about the service that they're getting. And, obviously, you can't just drop people's transactions or have duplicate transactions in their bank account or have money go missing from their bank account. That's why you really do just go, all right, I'm going to try and see what I can do to fix these issues. And yeah, to me, injecting failure is the best way to do it. I think the approach as well to get really good results is, what Colton said about thinking about it like a flu injection. So, and also, thinking about it a lot very fine-grained, detailed surgery. It's sometimes in a bank, it might be more like heart surgery. You really need to know a lot about the system. So often it's just finding the right people, and at banks, and that's actually pretty easy. Sometimes you've got a lot of people there that have 30 plus years experience. So that's how you can actually make a big impact. It's getting the right people together in the room. And something that we often do with our customers is get them to whiteboard. When was the last time you got in a room with folks and said, hey, let's actually just whiteboard out our system, draw out all the dependencies upstream, downstream, and figure out what we can do to improve this. So I think that's a great exercise. Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned financial institutes, Tammy, because I logged into one of mine today and it said I had $0 and none of my accounts anymore, and it was terrifying.
Oh gosh, that is terrifying. Exactly.
It's particularly timely that you mentioned that.
Yeah, we're chaos engineering that for you. It's just, you would react to it.
Exactly. Don't even worry about it. No, but I think just sort of back to your question now, on the larger scheme of things, when we started the company, it was still, the question that people were asking was still very much what is chaos engineering? And as we've kind of gone along in our company's history, we've seen that paradigm definitely shift. And, for the first year it was, what is it? The next year it was more, why would I do this? There's already plenty of chaos as is. This seems kind of crazy. And it's really shifted to okay, I get it. I know why I would like to do this. Just tell me how to do it. And so we're seeing a lot less pushback from these bigger companies, like you mentioned, in terms of I don't know why I would ever do this. Things are already crazy enough. The messaging that, hey, we need to go out and proactively do this so that, we're not getting woken up at 3 a.m. and trying to solve it, kind of as we wipe the sleep out of our eyes is starting to really make a lot more sense to people.
They also really don't want to be on the front page of the New York Times or anything else with a massive failure.
Well, it's been a rough year, honestly, for tech outages. I have a slide that I use in my talks that speaks about recent outages. And even if I've given that talk 2 or 3 weeks ago, there's always a new one to go grab. There's a headline that I thought kind of captured it last year. It was TechCrunch's, it was a bad month for the internet. And to me, it's validation about what our company's mission is. We as a society care about the internet. It's how we communicate. It's how we do business. It's how we travel. It's permeated all aspects of life. And so if we can help improve that experience so that someone can make it home to their loved ones over the holidays, or someone's able to take care of their finances more efficiently, that's an important service that we can help provide. And that's really what gets me out of bed in the morning. What's important to me is that, we can help our customers and help society have a more reliable internet.
Over the past, few years, I think the expectations, the public has of companies has changed quite a bit. Not even 10 years ago, there was still scheduled downtime and maintenance windows. And nowadays you go down for 10 minutes, you're all over Twitter, it's just very different times, and not just that, like it used to be, hey, I can't make an order. I can't place an order or something like that. But as we really start to evolve into, autonomous vehicles and start to place more of like oftentimes even our health and well-being into, the arms of AI and all of that. We need to be a bit more proactive in terms of how we approach this. Failing at that sort of level, it can be catastrophic,
Got it. So where do you see Gremlin going over I won't say the next 5 years, let's say over the next 2 years, or you can answer the next 5 years if you wish.
Are you a Simpsons fan at all?
Yes.
So there's an episode I love where Homer's the garbage man, and he has this whole song where he's like, "Can't somebody do it for me?" So I think that typifies where I would love to take the product. In today's world, we can give you the tooling to safely and securely cause these failures and learn from them. But wouldn't it be great if we can get to the world where we can recommend what you should run, we can learn about your system and your environment and your past outages, begin guiding you in how to experiment? What if we can take people out of it and start doing automatic failure testing in the background? How do we, in that spirit of how do you make it easy to do the right thing, how can we really push this forward so that it guides us and it leads us instead of it being, the tool that we're pulling along behind us?
A couple of years ago, I put out a survey asking people what topics they wanted us to cover on devchat.tv, and I got 2 overwhelming responses. One was from the JavaScript community. They wanted a React show. And the other one was from the Ruby community, and they wanted an Elixir show. So we started both. The React show, though, is React Roundup. And every week, we bring in people from the React community, and we have conversations with them about React, about the community, about open source, about what goes into React, how to build React apps, and what's going on and changing in the React community. So if you're looking to keep current on the current React ecosystem and what's going on in React, you definitely need to be checking out React Roundup. You can find it at reactroundup.com.
I like that question of how do you make it easy to do the right thing? And I think that we've touched on a lot of these different parts. And one of the things I was really responding well to was Tammy's point that training people on how to do it, expecting someone to be a firefighter, walk out of the street and be a volunteer firefighter, and then there's a fire, right? Is kind of against all reason and against all logic. You do need to bring them up to speed. You do need to show them where the hose is. You need to show them what to do. And so, yeah, I do like that idea that making it easy. So what have you guys? What are the trends and the things that you feel like you have made easy over the last made it easier to do the right thing in the last few years? And what are the next few things that you actually want to make easy, like more concrete examples?
I mean, first and foremost, I think we've just made the process of being able to run a chaos experiment much easier. To date, a lot of what's out there is really kind of open source, and you'll see companies kind of cobble together a couple of them, and we'll try to create an effective program around that, or we'll just write their own scripts, or we'll be SSHing onto boxes directly and running them. And so by creating this sort of like centralized ability to have a control plane that controls everything, has safety, security, simplicity built right into it, and has 11, 12 failure modes out the box, like it just makes it so much easier to get started with a program and, be doing it in a safe way, be able to rely upon the software to put in place, safety mechanisms for you. Like, we have one safety mechanism called the dead man switch. If any of our clients ever cannot report back into the control plane, they fail open, they kill the current attack, they roll it back in a very safe manner. And frankly, I think everybody kind of romanticizes it like, oh, cool, I want to build, write scripts to like go break stuff, but they don't often think about the reverse side of things, which is putting the world back into the right state. And so, having that sort of built in out of the box, I think makes it just that much easier to pick up the practice and get going.
It reminds me a lot of, in security, the practice of penetration testing, where you have some people, and I see them on Reddit, I see them other places, who are really enthusiastic. Yeah, I want to get into people's headquarters and break things and steal things and humiliate them. Well, that's maybe the first 10% of the job. The rest of it, and the reason they pay you to do it, is teaching them how to avoid that in the future, or putting guards in place to avoid that happening again.
Yeah, it's all of that extra work. It's funny. Forney mentioned there's a lot of open source projects, which is great. It's great to see innovation and folks following their passion and building cool technology. What's missing by far and large from the open source world of chaos engineering is the concept of safety and the concept of security. And they're kind of left as an exercise to the reader. And that's a shame, because, we're building a system that, if abused, could cause havoc, could cause mayhem. And so, ensuring that you have those checks and balances. It's easy to break stuff. It's harder to put it back into the steady state that it was in beforehand. So certainly, I think your point is very valid. That the pen testing analogy is an apt one. We have it a little bit easier, from the outside in, it's the defender's dilemma, where, any hole could allow access, could cause problems. In general, we're not dealing with malicious actors. We're dealing with, people that have good intent that, over have an oversight or miss something. And the domain of things that can go wrong in the infrastructure, platform, application level is a little bit better defined.
I think another thing too is, we talk to the community, and it really resonates with folks that on-call training just doesn't happen. And that's a great use case for chaos engineering. I think another thing too that's important is you need training for chaos engineering, which we actually built into the Gremlin product. So it actually trains you on how to run your chaos engineering experiments. And the way that we did that was we spoke to people from across the community and asked them, what kind of experiments do you think would really be valuable to run? And then we created a product feature called scenarios. And so when you actually log into Gremlin, you'll see that there are specific scenarios that you can run that come with Gremlin out of the box. Like, for example, one of them is validate auto-scaling. That's a common incident that occurs for a lot of companies. When you suddenly get a ton of traffic, does your system scale correctly? Are you able to actually service all of those different users? We actually make it really easy to get trained up on how to do chaos engineering. And that's something that I love.
It's funny you should compare, chaos engineering to pen testing now, because I had a very interesting conversation the other day, just in regards to how we think about that. Because security, we think about it, as, we are 100% secure, and we say that there are no breaches, but we don't talk about reliability in the same way. If we had one outage, it's not the same thing as one security failure, but I really think that's how we should be thinking about it. We should really be thinking about downtime, the same sort of mentality is you want to go for 100% uptime. You don't want to go for 0% downtime, really, right? The same way you'd go for zero breaches. So it's an interesting analogy, interesting conversation that I had the other day in that regard.
And it's also something that, a few years ago, I brought up the idea of a reliability bounty at ChaosConf when we first ran that conference. And I was like, hey, why doesn't this exist? Why are there, bounties for security engineers? But if I'm able to detect a reliability vulnerability or a data loss vulnerability, there's no bounty program for that. It was actually really interesting. And when I talked about that, I actually got pinged from a few VPs at Amazon. They were like, that's actually a good idea. Why doesn't that exist? So I just think, we're just scratching the surface of this. The cloud wasn't invented that long ago. Distributed systems weren't invented that long ago. So I'm looking forward to seeing where everything goes.
I think to pull it back to Tyler's question, these are some of the things we've done to make it easy, but it also ties to the question on kind of selling to the financial services or the enterprise, because so much of the challenge is there's the technology piece, but there's the social aspect. And I'm sure you're well familiar with this. Just, it's a cultural change. People change how they view it and what they're comfortable with, how they approach it. And so that's been a lot of what we've learned. We had our ideas from Dropbox, from Amazon, from Netflix of how to do it, but we didn't want to go out and be very prescriptive up front. We wanted to learn from customers, hear their experiences, hear what was different for them. And the nice thing is we've seen some patterns that have been successful. But I would say, one of the things that we can do a better job on and that we're working on is how do we guide these companies to know how to do the practice of chaos engineering? How do you bring it to your organization? Who's responsible for it? Who do you report about it to? Who gets held accountable if things don't work well? And how do you encourage people to adopt a new technique and a new approach in a way that welcomes them and teaches them how to do it? But also, sometimes you need a bit of a forcing function to hold people accountable. And so I think a lot of that people and processes and learning how to bring that to an organization effectively has been a place of a lot of learning, and there's a lot of room for innovation left to come.
Well, I greatly look forward to that innovation. We are starting to come toward the end of the hour. Was there anything anyone wanted to bring up? Any questions or points before we start to move toward picks?
One more thing, if you'd like to join the community, we do have a Chaos Engineering Slack, and there's over 4,000 engineers in there from Google, Facebook, Dropbox, Twitter, Netflix, like all of the companies that are, really find chaos engineering valuable. Target, like big finance companies. So yeah, I think that's a great place to go and learn about chaos engineering. There's tons of people in there. There's a learning channel, so you can ask questions in there and get help. You can find a mentor. We even have a jobs channel, and actually a lot of people have got jobs practicing chaos engineering. There was recently a job advertised by Spotify. They were looking for someone to do it. So yeah, it is a whole new field, and I think it's an exciting direction to take your career in. Yeah.
And people find that at gremlin.com/Slack. Is that the URL?
Yes, that's the URL, gremlin.com/Slack.
All right. Well, great to have you on the show. Great to hear about this. It's not really new, but a field of engineering that's, I think, is newly present in people's minds over the past few years. So thank you for what you're doing to bring attention to that and helping people. I mean, it's one of the worst feelings in the world to have something go down. And I think all of us have experienced this because I'm sure all of us have been on call and be standing there not knowing what to do next. Because it's never something that you've seen 10 times before, or at least in the worst moments are always when it's something you've never seen before.
Yeah. And my heart goes out to everyone that's in that boat that feels that. 10 years of being on call gave me a lot of humility and empathy for just how difficult this job is, how many different things we have to account for, how many business constraints of moving quickly and innovating. And so very much so. I feel for your face as you mentioned that. It reminds me of those first few outage calls I was on at Amazon, where panic at 1 a.m. in my basement, logging into my laptop, VPNing in, just like, hope we can figure this out quick.
Or you're going to have to get some coffee going. Yeah, one of the two things.
Usually both.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We end each show, picking out a couple of things that we've, picking out picks, things that we've found useful over the week. They can be technical, they can be non-technical. Either is fine. And I will go ahead and start. So I have one pick and one anti-pick. And I'll talk about the pick first. The pick is Dell Computing. So I recently tweeted that I started a new job at Mozilla and that I was using a Dell XPS 15 and I really liked it. Dell made a personalized video for me. They wrote a message. They had someone read it on the camera. They posted it on YouTube, thanking me for using Dell, wishing me luck on the job, and mentioning my 2 pet bunnies, who I tweet about quite a bit. So that is one of the most touching things a brand has ever done for me. And they've found a customer for life with that. The anti-pick, on the other hand, is aphids. I have several indoor houseplants. I have been fighting nasty aphid infections for months. And I know that ladybugs get rid of them, but I rent, and I don't think my landlord wants ladybugs wandering around my house or in my kitchen. So I'm trying some insecticidal soap, rinsing them, trying everything I can, but aphids are awful. And let's go to, speaking of things that are not awful, let's go to Tyler.
Thank you very much, Nell. So this week I have been resurrecting and resuscitating my home lab, and I have my own Dell server here at home. And one of the things I would like to recommend for people who might not be aware of it is that there's the VMUG Advantage. And what VMUG Advantage does is it gives you the ability to have a license for a small amount of servers so that you can run your own home lab and pay orders of magnitude less for a license for enterprise software, and let you play with it, and then you don't have to keep formatting your home lab every 60 days to get past the. But that could be a good chaos experiment. What happens if I haven't got a good backup of my vCenter? So that's one thing, and kind of going with that, when you have a home lab and you are essentially trying to go to an HTTPS site, Chrome, which is the browser that I use most of the time, will actually prevent you from going to certain sites. And they have this interesting thing that you can kind of ghost type. So some browsers you'll be able to click go there anyway. This is a command on Chrome that's it says that it's been since a certain version. I'll have to refer to the link, but essentially you type in "this is unsafe" and it will let you open the page. You have to acknowledge that you're doing something that's unsafe. But if it's in your own home lab, it's hopefully the blast radius is small. So.
Awesome. It just occurred to me with home labs, children are the ultimate chaos engineers when it comes to that, or
Children
chaos
and
causers
pets.
at least.
Yes.
Children and pets, yes.
Yep.
Tammy, how about you?
I would say my pick is I recently have moved house. So actually I really love the Target mobile app. It has a cool feature where you can take a picture of your room, or actually it has an AR feature. So you can say, I'm thinking about buying this chair, and then you can actually put it into the room and it's all scaled to the right size and everything. You can actually walk around and see what it would look like. So I love that. And also they're a customer too. So I'm always happy that they are a customer because I love Target. I actually really like what they provide as a service. My non-pick is just the gym in general. Right now I can't walk because I was doing so many lunges and squats and I'm in a lot of pain. So that's all. But I always think actually chaos engineering is a lot like weightlifting. You need to always try a little bit harder, push yourself a little bit more to learn and be better. So hopefully in a few days I'll feel good. But right now I'm not in the gym.
All right. Thank you. Colton, how about you?
That's an interesting question. We've been using the product Cohen recently to help just organize and track the work that we're doing across the team. It's been interesting as a founder to go from a team of 5 to 10 to 20 to 50 to 80, and how you keep everyone aligned and working on the same things. So I found that to be useful. I certainly agree. Children are chaos. I have 5 of them. They're all home from school for ski week. And so my anti-pick is sickness, is illness. It's just been lingering the last couple of weeks all around. And I know it's obviously, we're not dealing with it on the same scale as other people in the globe, but that time of the year where just everyone's not quite feeling right. You want to go do good work. You want to feel good and get outside. And you're just I'm going to take a nap.
Cool. And Forney, how about you?
Yeah, I gave this a little bit of thought, and I got to just default to the most recent memory I have here of something that really resonated with me. I just finished the book Deep Work by Cal Newport, and I really found a lot of what he talked about to be very important and very interesting, just in terms of how you set aside time to do the more deep tasks. So not, responding to email, responding to Slack, those sort of things, but really a lot of thought work. And particularly, I actually really liked the part about a time template. So, charting out your sort of optimal schedule and then trying to adhere to it. I may have taken it a bit too far. And, I've got it broken down into what categories it falls into, and all the hours are broken out. And I showed my partner and she was like, "You're out of your mind." But it's been very helpful in terms of, making sure that I have time to sit down and really think about the things that are important to the company, especially as a co-founder, CTO, having a little time to be a bit more strategic and not get so lost in the day-to-day shuffle is been really important and really helpful for me in recent past.
Awesome. What was the name of the book again?
Deep Work. It's by Cal Newport. I also really like Digital Minimalism by him as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show again. Loved hearing about this, loved having you, loved the conversation, and I'm sure our listeners are going to love it too. So thank you everyone for listening and have a wonderful week, and we will be back in your ears next week.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.